Bartleby's plan worked. No one was angry or sad or scared. No one was anything. And then, no one was left.
Whatever your opinions on Volume 6, most of the fandom seems to be in agreement that the best part of it all lies within the first half, most notably chapters 4 through 6, the Brunswick arc. Seemingly rooted in the lore of Sleepy Hollow when we were all first introduced to this mysterious town after the giant lore dump, people went right to work on theories of what could be awaiting our heroes here. That it was the home of the Headless Horseman, or in this case, the Headless Knucklevi. That Cthulhu was probably chilling in that well with mysterious colors unlike any seen on Earth. Or maybe just a Roman backstory. Because, you know, Brunswick, Torchwick, and this portrait. I mean, we don't need it, but, like, it would have been nice. Oh well. Regardless, let's dive a little bit deeper into these 3 episodes and see just how they pulled off this story so well, and why RWBY as a whole seems to excel specifically in horror movie tropes, because I am low-key trash for genre mixing. The most common complaint I've seen regarding this arc is that it's filler, that it's pointless, has nothing to do with the plot, and thus if it was removed, nothing would be changed. To which I have several points. The first of which is, things would have changed if it was removed? I feel like people, misunderstand what filler actually is. Filler is really any kind of content that fills the space between plot events. And yeah, a lot of the time it's just created to meet a certain number of episodes that the studio ordered, but filler also has the chance to develop the characters and world outside the constraints of the main story, while also expanding on particular themes. RWBY in particular could honestly benefit a lot from more filler content, honestly, because if you look at each volume, there's never really that much room for any events outside whatever the main plot is. This is especially apparent in volumes 4 through 6, where the characters' goals, be it getting to Mistral, securing the Relic of Knowledge, or whatever the case, end up locking characters either on a set path, or in place, an ugly house, mayhaps.
Bright side, we finally get out of this house.
When you look back at shows like Avatar: The Last Airbender, a lot of people's favorite episodes are the Tales of Ba Sing Se, The Beach, The Puppet Master, The Ember Island Players, all episodes that do great jobs with world building, character depthening and development, and even simply telling an engaging story to the audience. And all episodes that have very little to do with the overall plot of defeating the Fire Nation. But the Brunswick arc actually is connected to the main plot, in the sense that it's the characters trying to reignite their motivation to protect the world and the relics from Salem, despite the fact that they've learned that it's literally impossible to destroy her.
There is no beating Salem.
Honestly, for me, the biggest blow is having to admit Raven was right, but that's besides the point. Get out of here, bad bird mom.
I'm sorry.
Anyways, so the Brunswick arc is not filler, and even if it was, it still has a very strong connection to the show's overall theme of embracing optimism in the face of pessimism and darkness, but also this volume's themes of responsibility, actually giving a shit about the world because not caring makes you a waste of space and not some edgy intellectual, and sometimes your pseudo-parental figures are apathetic alcoholics who need a good kick to the teeth.
What?
Jeez, I really hope Remnant has, some kind of Alcoholics Anonymous, because, Jesus. Now that we've gotten that nitpicky bullshit out of the way, let's carry on and actually begin discussing the story, because, oh damn, it is so good. The reason Haven was saved and why Volume 5 was a victory embodied by its theme song literally called The Triumph is because it's honestly the first time the heroes have had a true victory. Volumes 1 and 2 featured Team RWBY up against not really big bad Roman Torchwick, and unsatisfying as Breach was, that was kind of the point, because it lured them into a false sense of security leading into the slow decay before everything fell apart at the end of Volume 3 during the fall of Beacon. And with the end of Volume 3, Team RWBY had been divided and scarred mentally, emotionally, and in Yang and Blake's cases physically. Penny, Pirate, and Ozpin were gone, and the villains had destabilized Vale and gotten the powers of the Fall Maiden on their side. Even with Cinder's injuries and the villains unable to get the Relic of Choice, they still had the upper hand going into the Mistral arc. Even Tyrion losing his stinger was bittersweet, with Crow dealing with the threat of succumbing to the venom. But the reason Volumes 4 and 5 turned out so well for the protagonist ties into the overall themes of dealing with the darkness of the world. See, a lot of people seem to think that the terms realistic and pessimistic are synonymous, and even interchangeable. We tend to numb ourselves to pain because we expect the worst of any situation, and we believe that will make it easier for us to deal with the pain when it inevitably murders our entire family and stomps on our heart right before our eyes. Basically, edgelords think being super pessimistic is cool and smart, and blood is what makes Game of Thrones really cool and not the actual emotional attachment we have to the characters. When really, Yalla 5. It's the optimists who are actually getting shit done, which is why I'm behind the idea of Haven being a victory. Now, how it was done, the only real part of that I love earnestly is Blake turning the tides with the Faunus Militia and the Mistral Police. For one part, because it's Blake returning to the battle, having gotten her shit together. Thank you, son, you are best boy and I love you. And for the other part, thank God a character was smart enough to contact the goddamn authorities for once. Would it have been nice to have the villains be cocky and arrogant, leading to their downfall, without them being complete morons? Yes. Would it have been nice to have the heroes win the Battle of Haven through actual strategy and smart thinking, instead of the villains tripping over their own shoelaces? Oh yes, I would be down for that. But ultimately, Haven was meant to be a victory, and I am behind that. Especially because with the high note going into Volume 6, things were bound to get worse. Rising is essentially a darker version of the Triumph, whose message is that even if we can't win this fight, we are obligated to at least try, because the alternative is to lay down and rot, and that is not congruous with who we are. Once the characters learned of Ozpin's lies and that Salem can't be destroyed, it's then their victory means nothing. Even with Haven saved, Salem herself can't be killed. She's immortal, and even if you physically destroy her, she'll simply regenerate in moments. And with her prepping an army to charge into Atlas herself at the end of Volume 6, if Salem manages to kill even more of our protagonists, take both the relics of knowledge and creation, and maybe even kidnap Ruby and possibly Oscar, then the victory at Haven doesn't impede whatever loss is awaiting in Atlas. In fact, if Haven was a complete loss, we'd be completely numbed as an audience and probably wouldn't be affected by another event like the fall of Beacon. And this despair our characters face, that all their efforts are likely in vain, is the perfect setup for the darkness that awaits them at Brunswick Farms. RWBY has always seemed to do well whenever it applies tropes from your typical horror film. Mountain Glen was unnerving, but the build-up to the Nuclevi in Volume 4 and the entirety of the Brunswick arc in Volume 6 are shining, or perhaps in this case dimming, examples of this approach. The Brunswick episodes, particularly Chapter 6, employ excellent use of carefully choosing whether to even use a background score, lingering shots on the goddamn wine cellar, when you need some beans, but all you've got is some shitty old basement wine. And those eyes, though. Okay, yes, those eyes too, but I primarily meant these eyes. Good lord, what? Oh, that's horrifying. Oh, Jesus Christ. Here, the characters are tired, not only physically, but mentally and emotionally. Blake and Yang have their own tensions at the thought of confronting Adam again, and Blake not understanding Yang's desire for them to be equals in this fight because Blake's trying so hard to make up for running away. Weiss isn't exactly thrilled at the idea of returning to Atlas in the first place, but I mean, at least she's probably thinking this to herself.
Oh shit, here we go again.
Meanwhile, Oscar's off in the corner having an existential crisis and not only dying at Salem's hands in this seemingly meaningless war, but also eventually losing himself and his mind to this lying fuck who basically hijacked his soul and brain without consent. And also still recovering from being punched and thrown into a tree by said liar's ex because we can't separate the creepy old wizard from the hapless farm child. And Crow is... Crow. All of the characters are succumbing to the despair of their situation. Their motivations of saving the world have seemingly been quashed, and no one's quite sure what to make of any of this. Even RWBY, the shining light of optimism and hope, seems to falter as the Apathy's influence increases when she stands by the well, and as the others, also high on Apathy Kool-Aid, try to convince her to just throw the lamp away and join them in their give up and let the world burn party.
People themselves are the problem, and more fighting won't alter that. I've done my bit. Let the world tear itself apart. I'm going to live it up while I can. I'm going to leave a beautiful corpse, an open bar tab, and no regrets.
And this is where the Apathy come in, because unlike most of the other Grimm, they don't simply attack you physically. Instead, they tear down your motivations, especially if you're already filled with doubt. And once you're weak enough and have completely given up the will to carry on, that's when they finish you off. Or if they can't reach you to do it themselves, they will simply keep you there until you let yourself waste away. As someone who has issues in getting out of bed because I'm just too lazy and comfy in the morning or early afternoon, and also am sometimes depressed at the thought of dealing with another shitty day, I feel personally attacked. The Apathy are the incarnation of, well, apathy. And of trolls. A lot of online trolls. Of this mentality that because the odds are against you, because the world overwhelms you and just what a goddamn mess it is, that the best you can do is to give up any hope in trying to fix things, keep to yourself, and lay down and rot. It's essentially the black pill mentality of the incel worldview, as discussed by our Lord, Savior, and Queen ContraPoints.
The black pill is essentially dogmatic hopelessness about dating, and about life in general.
Except in this case, to remove the entitled double standards on sex and the creepy, perverted hatred of women. Except in the case of the trolls. They're just like that.
It's the pinnacle of what psychotherapists call catastrophizing, a cognitive distortion where anxiety or depression leads you to infer apocalyptic conclusions from mundane setbacks and anxieties.
And that worldview is very hard to escape from. Even if you do try to keep moving forward, there is a very good chance that, be it for the external forces like the unjust society you live in, the toxic people that surround you, the YouTube algorithm recommending you videos that make easy bank on, well actually, what you love is garbage and you're dumb for liking it, part 17, and also the world sucks because I said so, that take like 5 minutes to churn out in some sweatshop somewhere. Or just shitty YouTube comments calling you a dumb sheeple and a apologist cunt. Or your own internal despair, self-loathing, and insecurities. You'll relapse. You'll take the black pill and fall back into the darkness. And the thing is, the darkness is comfortable. The darkness accepts you for the fuck up you are, telling you that, yeah, the world around you does suck, and offering comfort in reclusion and apathy. It's so comfortable, in fact, that you don't even notice the world around you falling apart. Or the people you love genuinely hurting from the things you refuse to stop. You become numb to everything, slowly and slowly becoming more at peace within the shadows, until you're gone. And I know firsthand how tempting that can be. This is where everything gets very real and I'm very scared by the reaction. I'm just gonna pretend my soda is wine and let's do this. Oh, my tongue is dry as shit. Ah, fuck. It's fine. My last year of high school was interesting. I was happy with who I was, surrounded by friends and loving all of my classes. Okay, most of my classes. You see, where I went to school, you got to choose your social studies course for your last credit. Most people simply took basic economics and then one of multiple public policy courses, be it in media studies, the one I should have taken, antisocial behavior, or criminal justice. But dumb, stupid, naive little me had the most unfortunate idea of, why not take AP macroeconomics? Oh, good lord. For those unaware, macroeconomics is exactly what it sounds like. The study of large-scale economic trends, mostly when it comes to the US. You learn about interest rates, GDP, productivity, and the magical wonders of unregulated Western capitalism. And yes, it sucks. It fucking sucks. The people in my class were great people, and my teacher was a great guy as well. He even saw that I was slipping behind in my coursework and my mental health was not the best, and took efforts to try and help. The problem I had with the class was not any of those people, but that the material and the whole point of the class fundamentally challenged practically every worldview and value I held at that time. Granted, now I'm very grateful for that challenge, but at the time I was not in a very good headspace for that. At that time, I wanted to go to the Savannah College of Art and Design, study animation, and then, well, I don't know, open a studio or something. But the point was that I wanted to do what I loved. I spent my whole life pretty much being told that whatever I wanted to do didn't matter and that the world would eat me alive. And you know what? That opinion was kind of right. As an aside, I ultimately feel I made the right choice holding back and not sending myself into debt for a degree I wasn't even sure I wanted. Despite all the shame I have faced, I know that if I had gone down to Savannah, I probably wouldn't have written my book, I probably wouldn't have started my channel, and I would probably have had an even bigger mental breakdown when my mom passed away. But the primary reason I couldn't go to SCAD was simply because I couldn't afford it. And I knew that if I took out the loans to go, I would never be able to pay them back because that's how going to college works in the United States. Our entire system is designed to benefit the people at the very top, the people who hold all the cards, while the average people just trying to get by and enjoy life and participate in the goddamn economy are pretty much screwed from the start. It's also how our healthcare works, it's how our workplaces work. Unlike most other developed nations, this is how almost everything in our society works. And the thing is, macroeconomics made it very clear to me that this was supposed to be a good thing, to the point where the people in the class were basically treated as elites. We were given this narrative that we were better than the mere hallway rats who didn't challenge themselves enough with AP classes and probably weren't going to elite schools or, like, I don't know, working in some bank somewhere. I'm not kidding, hallway rats was an actual term that was used, and it was fucking disgusting. And also to the point where the financial crisis in 2008 was justified as, oh well, if those people didn't want the economy to crash and their lives to be shattered, they should have known better not to take out mortgages that they couldn't afford that were sold in a pretty package to them. Because, you know, when you get mugged, it's clearly your fault for walking into your assailant's knife. I've always been a very egalitarian-minded person. My motto is live and let live. Ultimately, I believe that the people in most need in our society should be taken care of and given the chance to get back up on their feet without feeling ashamed of needing help. If you want to start a business, great, but you gotta give your workers reasonable hours, wages, and benefits, and not send them into panics over crunch time and unexpected layoffs. Or if you just want to live an average life at a standard 9 to 5 and nothing more, no shame. You shouldn't have to work 2 or even 3 jobs just so you can scrape by. But none of that is how our society operates. At least in the United States, we live in a hellhole where our taxes get funneled to some rich douchebags' golden pizzas. I'm not kidding, golden pizzas exist. They're like $2,000 a pop, and they taste like shit. 40,000 people die every year because they don't have access to basic healthcare. Our workers are treated like expendable garbage, while businesses that may try to treat their workers well are faced with obstacles trying to discourage them from doing so to meet their bottom line. And I can't get decent Wi-Fi to enjoy the YouTubes because a few monopolistic cable companies bought off Congress so that they don't need to improve their service. Because what is the alternative? Okay, so what the fuck does any of this sentimental flim-flam and bullshit have to do with my fake animu? Well, I'll tell you. It might not have much to do with the plot, but it has everything to do with theme. This is our world, at least in the US. This is the shit show that we're thrown into from birth and expected to fight tooth and nail to survive in. We don't have the creatures of Grimm trying to kill us constantly, but we do have Blue Cross Blue Shield, and about 1,000 other predatory insurance companies just like it. Not that they're inherently evil by nature, even though they are, but they're specifically designed so that in order to make a profit, they have to get out of covering people. Like telling a cancer patient that because they had acne, they had cancerous skin lesions that they were not aware of, and thus a pre-existing condition, and thus they can't get covered. And I don't know about you, but I don't like our world. It's filled with assholes and with greed, with bigots and pricks, with disgraceful scarcity constantly clashing against needless abundance, and people who hear you saying we should try to fix things, sighing and telling you it is how it is. Or even worse, saying that your attempt to address the evils of the world and wanting to fix them somehow makes you worse than the people you're calling out. Complacency and apathy go hand in hand. If you're not the one in pain, or you're at least not as in much pain as another, then radically changing things and challenging the status quo isn't necessarily in your interest, or certainly isn't the most convenient thing to espouse. At the very least, even if it is in your interest, you feel on some level endangered by change. Because change is scary. We could try to fix things and wind up making everything worse in the process, and there are historical precedents for that. But I'll tell you this much. I would rather try to make some kind of change and fail than to have been complacent and apathetic and simply wallow in it. And now, finally back to our actual goddamn programming, is where the silver eyes start to shine. As we learn from Maria later in the volume, the Silver Eyes are somehow connected to the power of the God of Light. They only affect the Grimm, but their power is able to blind, petrify, or even vaporize these monsters. And they're activated by the desire to protect life from destruction and death. Essentially, as silver in lore is often used as a source or arbiter of holy power, the Silver Eyes in RWBY are basically the true power of all magical girls to defeat evil with the power of love. You know, actually giving a shit about people and admitting that you cry at Bambi. We fucking know you cry at Bambi. In this sense, rather than the dreaded power of friendship we often see cheaply and lazily used in a lot of anime to save the day without a second thought, here in RWBY we actually have that trope expanded to fit the core theme of facing in the dark of the world and refusing to give into it. It has thematic weight behind it. RWBY's powers are the manifestation of her optimism and her love for the people around her. They are her compassion given mystical power, because compassion and vulnerability are true strength and courage. When Blake's put into danger, RWBY's powers activate because despite the grim situation, the love she has for her friends can never be extinguished. Rather than giving into the alluring promise of the apathy, she burps. Yeah, that's right, she burps. Through her eyes. Oh, that's horrifying. That's disgusting. Oh, good lord. She instead tells the apathy to fuck right off, grabs her friends, has her sort of girlfriend burn down this ugly-ass farm of bullshit, and takes off to cross the border illegally with her bisexual sister and her traumatized cat girlfriend, all while telling her uncle that he's being a fucking idiot and he needs to get over himself, sober up, and help them to not fucking die. Ultimately, it is RWBY, the optimist, who saves the day. Had she not saved the group from the apathy with the help of Maria, a fellow silver-eyed warrior who RWBY later helps rejoin the fight, Team RWBY would have been shredded by the apathy, and Oscar and Crow probably would have met the same fates as the farm's residents, giving up, or in Crow's case, drinking his pain away, until they both wasted away. Even with the prospect that Salem can't be defeated, RWBY and the others, having learned of the apathy's origins and how exactly Brunswick came to be destroyed from within, resolved to continue their fight anyway. because as Pyrrha proved to them all, exhibited by the mysterious Ginger when Team Junior catches up on the lesson a few chapters later, it is better to try and fail, and in this case even die, than to have not tried at all and wasted away. It is what it is a lie, and apathy will for sure seal your fate.
You may have taken the lead, but I'll even the score. You won the battle, you won't win the war. Not now, and never.
No, RWBY is not the story of champagne socialism, but this overall theme of facing the darkness of the world and remaining an optimist in what you believe kinda works, don't you think? I mean, how many of us in the RWBY fandom have struggled at jobs or classes that we hated, not sure on what we want to do with our lives, but dreaming that we could do what we love just like Monty did? Or just struggled in not being able to go to RTX because damn you American Airlines for charging me all these exorbitant petty fees. At the very least, maybe in the near future we could all try to take a page out of RWBY's book and see the world through a pair of silver eyes. The things we actually ought to care about, the people who actually matter, and what we want our own world to look like. Unless that world looks like it was soaked in the nasty tars of 4chan, in which case I offer you a hug, a therapist, and a lot of domestic Bumblebee fan art. Lord knows you need it. Anyways, if you enjoyed today's video and want to see more content from me, then be sure not only to check out my other content, RWBY and otherwise, but to also please consider supporting the channel over on Patreon and or checking out the links to my cursed book in the description below. I know that might seem a little bougie after the rant I just went on, but if I'm gonna survive in this system for the time being, I gotta not die. But for the record, Bernie 2020, yes I went there, the man befriended a dove, what more do you people fucking want? I'm the Unicorn of War, and this has been a shit show.